Welcome to Screenwriters Rewatch. In this episode, I'm joined by Fiona, and we're going to be comparing the 1996 Danny DeVito film Matilda, based on the book of the same name by Roald Dahl, with the recent adaptation of Matilda the Musical, directed by Maggie Anderson. Join Fiona and I for our full-length discussion over on the podcast, where we take a closer look at this classic story and how it has evolved across mediums and through modern lenses. Thank you for joining me, Fiona. Welcome back to Screenwriters Rewatch. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me. Lovely to be here to talk about two great films. Well,
Yeah.
two interesting films.
Interesting films. Yes. And I I don't know if I should confess how old I was when I first read Matilda or how old I was when I saw the film in 1996, but needless to say, I was young enough to enjoy both as a child. But having seen the new adaptation and the stage show, I was really struck by how this story has evolved. And I couldn't think of anyone better to discuss it with. um,
So, is that a reflection of my age, perhaps?
No, not at all. No, I think it.
Around long
This,
enough.
don't make me dig a hole. No, it's because of the brilliant perspective that this film, both of these films have, and the book has, from the point of view of not only a child but also a both of them are girls, and the relationship with Miss Honey, and how that is viewed from the 90s, which was 30 years ago, and also from today. So, what's your relationship with this story in particular?
Yeah, well, I also read the book at a time, the indeterminate time. I can't actually remember, and I can't remember seeing the 1996 film when I first saw it, but I definitely watched it over and over with my young son when he was little. He really loved that film, and so I watched it over and over and over again as he was growing up, in his sort of, between like 5 and 10. He really loved that film, and so that I've got a very warm feeling towards that film. I really love it, and I loved the adaptation of the book. I thought it was a fairly faithful adaptation of Roald Dahl's original story. I think it's got that quirky, dark humor that we love so much from Roald Dahl. Um, and then I've only recently, I didn't see the musical. I've always wanted to see the musical, but I haven't. But then only recently, like a couple of days ago, I only watched the film of the musical, which is another adaptation again. So I think the interesting thing to kind of caveat this conversation with is, even though the story is the same, we are talking about a film adaptation of a book, and then a film adaptation of a stage play of a book. So they've all got these different perspectives, which are important, I think, in terms of how the films, or how both of the films articulate the book story, if you like, because there are some nuances that I think are specific to the film version of the stage play versus the film, if you like. It gets very meta, doesn't it?
It does, but you're absolutely right, because of course different mediums require different story structures, different characterizations. And I think when we get to the discussion point over on our podcast, I'm really interested to hear how the characters have evolved, not just through those mediums, but more specifically through sort of more of a modern lens, but not just because of that, but because of what we know about better characterization and story structure, and how that translates, and whether it enriches those characters or not. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion.
Well, I am going to put something out there at this stage, and that is, I think, after much consideration, I do think I find the 1996 film version a more satisfying story for myself. I'm not sure if that's controversial or not, but just on reflection of all of the elements around the screenplay, the characterization, the themes, the tone, all of those things as a film, as a story in a film, I think, well, I definitely did find the 1996 version more satisfying. So perhaps that's something we can dig into a little bit.
Mm,
How does
yeah.
that compare to you?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think I have an appreciation for all of the versions of this for lots of different reasons. And I think fundamentally I prefer the musical and the musical adaptation because I feel that Matilda has a more true to life sort of personality. I feel that actually Roald Dahl was very good at writing his characters, but he was very typical at writing female characters as quite, if they weren't gross and horrible and twisted and evil, then they were really demure and they were patient and accepting. And I really liked that Matilda was given the right to be frustrated with her situation and that she was allowed to be angry and express herself in a way that wasn't just all smiley and happy. So I really liked that sort of slightly more gritty version of Matilda. But I do still have a fondness for the sort of the tenderness that came from that 1996 version.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because I think that I felt like her character didn't have, in the musical film version, didn't have quite the character arc that the 1996 version did. And I think the 1996 version was very much focused on the core of the story was the story of a girl and her finding herself and her voice and her truth, if you like, and somebody to love her. Whereas I think the musical version um, was much broader in terms of it was about Matilda saving the school from the bully. I mean, yes, she had a personal journey, but the arc of that journey I felt was not as strong because she was really strong right from the get go. And it kind of like there wasn't, I felt from her own personal arc, there wasn't that far to go.
Well, I have an interesting theory actually about the musical version, which I cannot wait to divulge over on the podcast. So, if you want to keep following our discussion here, join us over on the podcast. Just search for the Script Department wherever you get your podcasts, or use the link in the description of the video below, or even better, subscribe, and you'll never miss an episode again. But we will see you over there very shortly.